From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good Sunday morning. It has been a busy week on Capitol Hill. We're sitting down with Austin Congressman Lloyd Doggett for an update. But first, let's get to the three things you need to know in Texas politics. Two Texas senators sent a warning letter to the leaders of public universities suggesting they will withhold funding if the schools don't comply with the state ban on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. In the letter, Republican Senators Brandon Creighton and Paul Betancourt say they have found numerous instances of universities having DEI programs or offices just under a different name, particularly at health-related institutions. The letter calls on university leaders to be able to provide, quote, clear and indisputable evidence that DEI programming has been fully eliminated as the legislature debates the budget. On Thursday, the Texas Senate unanimously passed Senate Bill 28 to ban lottery couriers. Couriers are third-party vendors that allow people to buy state lottery tickets virtually or over the phone. Then someone from the courier service goes to a store and buys the tickets in person. Couriers were thrown into the spotlight last week after Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick posted this video questioning the integrity of the Texas lottery after a winning ticket was purchased through a courier service at a retail store. The store and courier are owned by the same company, DraftKings. SB 28 now heads to the House. U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is offering Texas support for its measles outbreak. This week, the Texas Department of Health and Human Services reported a school-aged child in West Texas died from the virus. This is the first measles death in the United States in a decade. The child was unvaccinated and hospitalized in Lubbock last week. Since the outbreak started in late January, Texas has reported more than 145 cases. State leaders expect that number to grow. On Tuesday, the U.S. House of Representatives narrowly passed a budget resolution starting the process of putting President Donald Trump's legislative agenda in place. You've likely seen the headlines stating there will be massive cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, and more. I took your questions about what's happening in Washington to Austin Congressman Lloyd Doggett. This week, the House narrowly passed a budget. Talk to us about what was in it and more specifically the big cuts that were made.
Well, this budget is just a series of numbers. And so I had Republican colleagues saying, oh, there's nothing in here about cutting Medicaid. It's just impossible to comply with the instructions on the numbers without cutting substantially the health care program that pays for half of the babies that are born at Seton Hospital, half of the children that go to Dell Medical Children's Hospital. It's a big cut, as well as a significant amount for nursing homes all over the state that we rely upon. So the cuts that could come in that budget can have a big impact on the lives of many people. And even if you're not relying on Medicaid for a baby or a child, it has a big impact on the facility in their ability to deliver health care to all the rest of us. And all of this done in order to provide an incredible amount of new tax breaks for people like Elon Musk.
Yeah, let's rewind just a step. You said something, your Republican colleagues say, oh, this is just a bunch of numbers. What did it look like for people who may not be following it so closely?
Someone who saw the resolution on budget, which narrowly passed the committee I serve on, would only see numbers, instructions to each committee. So the Commerce Committee, which has responsibility for Medicaid, was told to reduce the amount that they're spending by almost $1 trillion. On the other hand, the Ways and Means Committee, which handles taxes, which I serve on, was told that we could increase the budget deficit by $4.5 trillion. The other thing, people that are concerned about fiscal responsibility, and I've always been a pay-as-you-go progressive. I want better education and health care, but I think we pay for it, not borrow for it. Well, this budget, promoted by some of the great fiscal hawks of the Congress, Republicans, will increase the budget deficit by $4 trillion. So I say all these budget hawks have gone south for winter because they're not standing up for fiscal responsibility. At the same time, they're wrecking the future of many families, not just on health care, but on educational opportunity, on medical research, on so many other issues.
The economy, I think, is such a big concern for people. We heard people talking about that, you know, in study after study, particularly poll after poll, as we were going into the election season. And we are having big, drastic cuts of workforce within the federal government. Just here in Austin, we're expecting to see IRS workers laid off. Talk to us about what's happening with those federal worker layoffs.
Well, I'd approach it from several perspectives. Long ago, as a state senator, I was the author of the Sunset Act. It provides for periodic performance audits of all of our state agencies. It's designed to eliminate waste and duplication. I'm all for eliminating waste at the federal level, but you do that with careful audits, not press releases. And what has happened here is they haven't chosen the people who are doing the poorest performance at these federal agencies, and I'm sure there are some. They took the employees that were the easiest to get rid of. So someone like a FAA worker at the airport, the maintenance worker who maintains the safety equipment there. He was 3 weeks away from qualifying as a full employee. He had served a year, 2 years there, whatever the probationary period is, and he gets fired. They need that for safety out there. It has an impact. And then think about the impact on the lives of those families who are doing their job, thinks he's about to get a promotion, and then suddenly there's no paycheck to pay for the car payment or the rent or the mortgage or the kids' school expenses. This is just wrong in the way it's being done. I think it has been shoot first and ask questions later. It's not efficient. They call it DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. There's no efficiency there. They're not improving the quality of our government services. They're just on a slash and burn approach, and they use terms like they're finding all this fraud. If they found fraud, they should take it to the U.S. Attorney and prosecute it. They have yet to identify a penny of fraud. They talk about waste, and I'm sure there is some, but they aren't identifying that. We have not even been able to find out how many people are working for DOGE, whether they had background checks, whether they filed financial disclosures to avoid that. And of course, one of the worst of those endeavors doesn't affect us directly in the workforce here, but the invasion of our privacy. Having a 25-year-old who bragged about the fact that he was a racist before being racist was cool, that he was allowed to go into the privacy records, Social Security, tax data, health records of all of us, and we don't know what's happened to that or how he may have messed up the system or what advantage Elon Musk might gain over his competitors by access to that information.
Yeah. You know, some of that happening at the USAID building.
Yes.
You know, particularly you had those employees completely locked out of their offices.
Yes.
And I think one of the questions that we certainly get and that on the minds of people is, well, where is Congress? What is Congress doing? Or is the majority of Congress just okay with this?
Well, I will tell you that as a Democrat, we're doing everything we possibly can to fight back against this. Supporting litigation, lawsuits, because ultimately the courts can, and there have been over 100 lawsuits filed, orders to this administration, I think about 30 times, to stop doing various things. That's one remedy. We're trying to legislate. I try to bring up at every opportunity I can in our committee, pointing out this wrongdoing. One of my colleagues tried to subpoena Musk to come testify. Republicans blocked it. But you do need to understand the attitude of the Republicans. Congress won't push back because its Republican majority doesn't want to, it seems to be fearful of a mean tweet from President Trump, and they won't speak up about it. Then it's defaulting on its responsibilities, and that's where the court system comes into play and why we are relying on litigation so much. But I think ultimately, and I think it may have delayed President Trump on these tariffs for a while, ultimately it will be public sentiment that will change things. We cannot do it alone in Congress. We need the public actively engaged and telling all their members of Congress, Republican and Democrat, we don't approve of this. We want responsible government that meets our needs. We want efficient government that eliminates waste, but it doesn't have to act in such a harsh way toward federal employees.
Going back to the House budget vote, it will be weeks before anything becomes law. There will be committee hearings to decide the details, and then the House has to send its version of the bill to the Senate, which is working on its own plan. Of course, we will continue to follow it all. That's Texas This Week.